Welcome everybody, Shir number 914. We're learning today L'Refuah Shalem Aleya Bas Tila Pesel, Lila Nishmas Boisha Dov Ben Rabban Zis, and Lila Nishmas Blima Bas Reb Moshe. Getting back to a malacha of MAKEH B'PATISH. So an interesting question comes up. It's a little bit more on the boina side, which again, like we've mentioned quite a number of times, boina, MAKEH B'PATISH, they're basically first cousins, and many of the shilas could be possibly MAKEH B'PATISH to Kinmana, and some of them could be more boina. This is a little bit more on the boina side, but an interesting question. Now it's coming up a little bit more of the cooler weather, so sometimes people bring things inside. You have sometimes a child swing. Somebody once asked me, interesting, you have these swings that, the child, you hook it on a rod or whatever, and you swing it back and forth, very simple. And a little child sits in it. So putting it together the first time on Shabbos in general is taka a problem. Taki brings down, as the Sefer Shabbos home brings it down, that assembling these things for the first time is taka a problem. But now let's say you have this swing, and whatever the question is, it has hooks, and you want to put on a rod outside, put on a rod inside, sometimes possibly the door frame. And lemaisa, it's made, this child swing is made to you. You just hook it on the door frame and you put the kid in it, or you hook it on a rod and put the child in it. You hook it on a rod outside. So the question is, could I do that? Could I move it? Put it here, put it there. Is there a problem when I hook it onto the door frame or whatever it is, or the rod that's inside the house or outside the house? Is that a problem? So Lemai said this would not be a problem because this is a regular normal usage. This is just the swing once it's already put together. Like we said, putting it together that you can't do the first time assembling it, but Lemai said once it's put together, you put it on this area, the door frame, you put it on this rod, you move it to the other rod outside, whatever the case is, you just hook it on. Sometimes people have outside under a porch, there's a rod. You just put it on there, and there's two little hooks. There's no screwing involved, there's nothing. And it stays, and that's all it stays. I mean, you have to make sure that it's on firm. And you put the kid in, there's no problem. So moving that around, putting it here, putting it there, in other words, these various different places to hang it up with the child, sometimes inside, sometimes outside, it's raining, whatever, not be a problem. Now, the only thing I do want to mention, one has to be careful not to put it on a tree branch. In other words, if you put the two hooks for the baby swing, it's like a baby swing type of thing. You put them on a tree branch, or not on a tree itself, but on a tree branch that's sticking out, that's strong, it's going to hold it. That you're not allowed to do, because as we've learned in the past, we're going to get into that when we get to those halachas, but lemaisa, one is not allowed to make use of a tree. So hooking these swings onto tree branches, if it's outside in the country, summertime or whatever, that cannot be done. But if it's a regular rod, it's a door frame, these type of things, moving it around is not a problem, as long as you don't have to screw anything in, bang any nails and stuff like that. Just hooking it on is fine. So now the Sefer Binyan Shabbos brings down an interesting halacha. It doesn't really apply to Shabbos. It has to do with Shabbos candles and making the candle fit into the hole it's supposed to go into in the leichter, right, in the Shabbos, in the candelabra. So obviously we light before Shabbos. One is not allowed to light the candle on Shabbos, so it doesn't really apply. But it does apply to Yom Tov. Interesting halacha in reference to MAKEH B'PATISH that would apply to Yom Tov. He brings down to the Sefer Binyan Shabbos that one is not allowed to cut. Let's say somebody wants the candle doesn't fit into the hole in the candelabra, into the light, in the hole that it's supposed to go into. So the person wants to cut. They want to cut off part of the candle. Cut it around a little bit, and like this, you'll be able to get it into the lamp, into the hole over there. So that's taka problem to do because of the fact he brings down the nimsa shaldei shechoitech es reichef haner. Since you're cutting off the width, some of it's too fat or whatever you're cutting off, or you're cutting off possibly from the bottom. Maybe you're making it shorter. You're mamish making it into now a usable candle that it'll fit in. Besides the fact, not just that, but you're really running into a problem of mamachek also, because the bottom line is it's whenever you're dealing with wax, and it's you're cutting off parts of wax, and it's you're sort of like smearing it off. It could be running into a problem of mamachek depending on how it's done. But be it as it may, he brings down that cutting it off definitely would be running into a problem of tikkun mada, MAKEH B'PATISH, but he does bring down ulam mutter lidchayk. He brings down you're allowed to push it in lidchayk haner, to push in the ner. In other words, it doesn't fit in. I push it in biyadav kadei sheikanis lamp. It's going to be able to stick in to have a the have tikkun kalachayad, because even though you'll say it's a tikkun, it's kalachayad. So just to go through it a little bit, it's important. So again, like we said, it's not negayah to Shabbos, but definitely comes up on Yom Tif. The Shmir Shabbos Gehilchos in Perek Yud Gimel Ois Mem Beis. Yeah, he says like this: when preparing a candle for lighting up, one must not, you have to be careful not just to cut it, but also heating it. One must not heat its base to make it melt and adhere more firmly to the candlestick. Sometimes people, they like to, let's say like before Shabbos, before one is Makabel Shabbos, obviously before one lights, so sometimes they'll heat up the bottom. So that's where he says preparing, one has to be careful not to heat the base, making it melt, and therefore it's going to be able to adhere to the candlestick. It brings also, again, the Shmir Shabbos Gehilchos, it's also likewise also to make the base of the candle narrower, like we said, to make it narrower, to fit the size of the whole of the candlestick by cutting it and so on. But now, as far as sticking it in, pushing it in, like we said, so Lemaisi brings from the Shmir Shabbos Gehilchos from Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach that even though you're pushing it in, you have to push it in hard, you have to use koyach to push it in. Mikol Makom, he says, Kevon shezeh derech shimusha. This is the way that they use it. In other words, people usually don't prepare these things like 2 days before for Yom Tov and so on. So you have to push it in. It's the regular way. So he says, Ein zeh bechlal mechatech. It wouldn't be mechatech, which is like cutting it down to size, or possibly memareach or MAKEH B'PATIsh because of the fact that you're doing this kalachiyad, you're doing it like not in the regular way. So he brings from Shlomo Zalman that the efsher yesh lahakol, and like we said, the Sefer Binyan Shabbos Lemaisa brings it down that he brings rise over there that it would be mutter. He brings Lemaisa from a Rashi and Beya that when something's to do a tikkun, shu tikkun kalachiyad l'tzarich Yom Tif would be mutter. Just one more last thing in reference to when you're dealing with the candle, in reference to Yom Tov, again, the Shabbos is not negayah, but he brings down the Sefer Binyan Shabbos, interesting halacha also. So he brings it, Lemaisa brings it from the from the Mishnah Berurah, Hilchos Yom Tov, Siman Tov Kuf Yodalid, Sifkat and Lametes, that Lemaisa, somebody has this candle and they have their wick is too long. Let's say they have the wick is sticking out too much, it's not going to burn well, or it doesn't look nice or whatever. So somebody just wants to cut off the top of the string of the wick that's sticking out of the candle to make it that'll burn good, on Yom Tov. So that's also a problem. That's not allowed to be done. Brings down the Mishnah Berurah over there that he says v'huadin im hois. No, he talks about the hu bechlal tikkun manush mesaken v'ois b'psila achas shtaim. If you make one wick into two, you cut it in the middle. You make one wick into two, and it's now usable. That's one way of being that you can't do it because that's tikkun money. You're now making a usable wick. He also says v'huadin im hois arucha b'yoser. If it's too long, the wick is too long. I have such a candle where the wick is too long. It's not so nice. V'choitech mimenu. And you cut off part of it, that's all. Gamkein also, he says that would also be a problem. That's not allowed to be done. It also falls under the guidelines of tikemana, of you are now fixing it up, that it's going to burn well. So you now have a better candle, you have a better wick. Okay, we're going to stop here. Thank you for listening. Atzlach and bracha, kol tov.